Good afternoon. I'm Stephanie Arbutina, and I'm the Child Welfare and Juvenile Justice Policy Director for Children First. I am proud to be here representing the Youth Safety Coalition, a broad, diverse group of advocates from across the Commonwealth who share a commitment to creating a more just juvenile legal system. One that takes into consideration that young people's brains are still developing, that they have great potential to learn new ways of doing things. We all want safe communities. Well, the best path to public safety is an approach that meets young people where they are and does not turn to incarceration as the first and only response. The proven alternative is to invest in youth, addressing their behavior while keeping them in their homes, schools, and communities whenever possible, so they learn how to do better and stay on track toward a bright future. In 2021, a bipartisan, multi-branch juvenile justice task force recommended 35 changes to improve how Pennsylvania's juvenile justice system operates. It has now been 3 years, and not one of the recommendations has been implemented. Today, there is hope. Last year, a bipartisan legislative youth safety caucus was established to advance the task force's recommendations. There is legislation moving through the General Assembly now to implement some of the most substantive recommendations. Today we're here talking about one of those bills, House Bill 1381, and the positive impact it will have on young people and their communities. We're thankful for the legislators who are championing these reforms. Several of them are speaking here today. You're also going to hear the firsthand and sometimes heartbreaking experiences of people who have been affected by the juvenile justice system in the Commonwealth and how these changes could have changed their lives for the better. It's my honor to kick off today's program by introducing Representative Dan Miller of Allegheny County, the sponsor of House Bill 1381 and a passionate champion of the Commonwealth's children in the juvenile justice system. Representative Dan Miller.
Okay, all right, good afternoon. I'm very excited to be here. Thankful for the opportunity to talk about House Bill 1381, which I also had the chance to introduce along with Representative Harris and Representative Bullock from Philadelphia. Appreciate their support. Look, 1381 does what should be done. It takes a whole bunch. I ain't talking one or two recommendations. It takes a whole bunch of those recommendations and puts them into motion. So not only does it do that, but it builds off of them by taking other good ideas that we know have worked. Never about like lessening accountability, keeping accountability, and improving results for everyone in the system. That's the reality of what 1381 does. And there are some key components of it that we've not only taken recommendations from that bipartisan task force, but we've added a couple other things that we know should be talked about, like Miranda warnings that show that the average child under 17 years of age doesn't know what they mean, but yet is expected to exercise their rights. It is impossible to exercise your right if you don't know what it means. Like addressing disability in courts. Because we know that if you have a disability in the school system, before you are disciplined, punished in some way, they will do a manifest determination hearing to make sure that your action was not part of your diagnosis. But we don't do that in juvenile court. We don't address the reality that a higher percentage of the children who we have in our juvenile court have a diagnosis of some type. 1381 recognizes that reality and puts that into place. But that's not all it does. Because we are trying to be sure that in this system we are recognizing every child that's there, no matter what your issues and needs that brought you in, that the goal is to make sure that the experience is right, justice is done, accountability is met, but improvement in life is achieved. And that must be the goal. Because otherwise then we are a bit lost as to what makes a juvenile system a juvenile system. So we are excited to talk about 1381. We recognize that it is a big bill, that we aren't trying to take a small bite. And that's because the work that was done by that bipartisan task force should be an alarm bell to everyone who cares about the children in Pennsylvania. Especially if you come from a household of limited economic means, especially if you have a disability or mental health diagnosis, especially if you are a child who just happens to be black or brown, because the numbers will show that this system is more likely to do you harm the longer you're in than help you. Make sure that you get your life in a position of opportunity that we know you would want for your child. And that's the reality of what we're talking about. Again, it is not an issue of lessening accountability. It's an issue of improving results for every child that is in Pennsylvania across the board. I worked in juvenile justice for quite some time, and I appreciate the work and the passion on all sides of the aisle that needs to be done in the courtroom, from the district attorneys to the public defenders, and everyone in between that's there. You know, I'm tired and concerned about what isn't invested into our court system, what isn't invested into providing opportunities. We have to be sure that no child should be waiting for a mental health evaluation for months while they sit in a placement locked up. And I'm getting tired of hearing, well, there's no place for us to care for our children, so we must send them out of state, as if that somehow is going to help them. Yeah. I am tired of seeing so many children end up never getting out, and how you can be arrested at 10 and never have another offense, but you will be in that system until you can legally vote. That is too long. We must demand more accountability from our system, and this body here must fund it. Not only change the law to improve results based on the bipartisan task force, but it also must fund it so that those judges, those probation officers, those caseworkers who are struggling to do their job have the resources to be sure that no child is waiting for services. No child gets locked up because they can't find the services to keep them at home. And that should shock you. But that is the reality for too many of our kids. They are waiting for help that we should be providing right off the bat. And they're spending weeks, months, years in programs that cannot meet those needs. And by the way, on the educational needs of the children in those systems, you cannot say that you are meeting a child's constitutional rights, especially with an IEP, by placing them in a school system that cannot provide those IEP services. That is a disservice. That is an injustice. Like so much, this body here has the ability not only to make the changes, but to fund it and then get us all to where we need to be, which is a better result in quicker time, less kids in the system, more results, victim prioritization. And by the way, please somebody stop billing kids who can't work. Stop billing kids who can't work. If you can't legally work because you're too young, stop billing them. And by the way, I don't know, we could go on. Look, it's a good bill. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Representative Miller. I want to introduce another one of our legislative champions, Senator Bartolotta.
I could listen to Dan all day long, but it is a little chilly out here. But I absolutely love his passion. I agree with every single word that he just said. And I'm here to tell you about just a couple of pieces of legislation that I have in the Senate. My name is Senator Bartolotta, and I am very pleased to be part of today's press conference to discuss the important work happening at the state level to reform, hopefully, our juvenile justice system. Criminal justice reform is a topic that I'm very passionate about because I understand how these policy changes will help promote safer communities, reduce recidivism, and ensure better outcomes for individuals who are part of this system. I'm championing a number of legislative efforts to improve the adult correctional system, such as workforce training for inmates and eliminating the $5 copay for medical visits while incarcerated, and gratefully, to have passed recently probation reform and dignity and safety for incarcerated women. Baby steps. We're making a lot of progress. But right now we need to focus on our juvenile justice system. And by that, I am a proud member of the Pennsylvania Prison Society, which is an organization that was created by people like Benjamin Franklin and Benjamin Rush. And it seeks to promote the health, safety, and dignity of all incarcerated people. Despite being very involved in this reform movement, I was shocked to learn how badly our juvenile justice system was failing our youth until I met with Pew just several years ago. And we dug into the Pennsylvania Juvenile Justice Task Force findings. One of those findings is that the majority of kids who came into the juvenile justice system over the past decade were brought in not for serious felonies or personal offenses, but for misdemeanors and violations. Worse yet, nearly 60% of young people sent to residential placement were placed on a misdemeanor. Just 39% committed a person offense, and almost 40% were removed from home on their first written allegation. First time, right out of the gate. Not long after looking into the report's findings, I had the opportunity to meet with individuals that, as youth, had been negatively impacted by our juvenile justice system. And this is what led me to create the General Assembly's first bipartisan Youth Safety Caucus, years after I started the first ever Criminal Justice Reform Caucus. I am very proud to chair this caucus with my colleagues, Senator Anthony Williams, Representative Melissa Shusterman, and Representative Natalie Mahalik. Our goal as a caucus is to identify and implement evidence-based changes to our juvenile justice system that urgently need to be addressed. We are advocating for policies that focus on keeping families intact by requiring the use of community-based services instead of incarceration whenever it's consistent with public safety and the needs of the youth. Holding young people accountable while enabling them to learn from their mistakes and grow up into responsible and productive members of the community. And pursuing evidence-based policies that improve outcomes, reduce recidivism, and strengthen public safety for everyone. Additionally, I am a prime sponsor of Senate Bill 751, along with Senators Anthony Williams and Senator Hughes, that would eliminate direct file in Pennsylvania. I believe this is to be one of the most important bills we're advocating for because the immense and immediate change it could make in so many youth's lives. But I also believe it's going to be one of the most challenging to get signed into law. Juveniles with the most serious offenses deserve to still be treated as kids. Research tells us that the human brain is still developing until age 25 to 28. Juveniles are much more susceptible to peer pressure and don't have the same grasp of outcomes and consequences as adults do. Yet I am sure many of you know all too well, Pennsylvania law currently allows some children to be automatically charged as if they were adults. That's what's known as direct file. Direct file can lead to kids sitting for months in adult jails, exposing them to solitary confinement. That's 23 hours a day in a cell. They lose their education, some lose scholarships, and the stigma goes on and on. Many suffer from trauma and victimization. Research shows direct file increases recidivism, the opposite effect we should be striving for with anyone, but particularly our young people at the very beginning of their lives. Nearly 60% of direct file cases are returned to juvenile court where they should have started. They're dismissed or withdrawn. This represents a staggering waste of both money and human potential. Senate Bill 751 will require that all cases for children start in the juvenile system, which moves much faster than the adult system. There, these kids can be evaluated by a juvenile court justice trained in brain science and best practices for our youth, and only after that hearing could the case be transferred to the adult system if needed. I'm almost done. We can hold our youth accountable while giving them a second chance, putting them on the path to becoming better citizens and reducing their likelihood of reoffending at the same time. Let's not give our youth life sentences for a mistake they make when they're juveniles. Lastly, I'm additionally sponsoring Senate Bill 752 with Senator Anthony Williams. This bill will expand diversion, limit detention, and tailor out-of-home placement. Right now in Pennsylvania, many juveniles with low-level, non-violent offenses are arrested and referred to court. There, they can end up being removed from their homes and placed in detention or out-of-home placement while awaiting their very first hearing before any criminal conviction. This produces bad outcomes for kids. It's not efficient for taxpayers. Youth are spending an average of 16 months in placement over the course of their cases. And for some juveniles, it's much longer. Senate Bill 752 would limit the use of detention and placement to juveniles with the most serious offenses whose needs can't be met in the community. Reducing the use of out-of-home placement helps has a potential to save Pennsylvania up to $81 million over 5 years, and a lifetime for those affected. It's our hope we can reinvest that savings right back into evidence-based community programming and diversion. To me, these are smart policies, the ones that are good for young people, cost-effective for the Commonwealth, and safer for communities in the long term. Let's get our kids back to where they belong with their families, back to school, and put them on the right path. We have the ability. Now let's get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Now we're going to hear from some folks that have been personally impacted by this system in Pennsylvania. Really important stories. Starting us off is going to be Aqilah David with the Juvenile Law Center.
Yes, my name is Aqilah, and I'm here with the Juvenile Law Center and the Youth Art Self-Empowerment Project. I was incarcerated at the age of 15, and how young people are being treated and cared for needs to change. HB 1381 can pave the way for a brighter future for young people. I will discuss a few key provisions. Eliminating fines and fees is important because young people are being ordered to pay the courts money that literally any young person cannot afford. Believe me, I was one of the many. This puts young people in debt before they can even become an adult. We need to end direct file because kids deserve to be treated as such, kids. Under 18, youth are kids. Why are we sending kids to adult jails? Children need different supports than adults. Directly charging children as adults is traumatizing, and it isn't caring for youth in Pennsylvania. Children are being held at adult facilities, which is hugely unsafe. HB 1381 also limits the use of placement. Placement should not be the first answer. Young people are coming into contact with the juvenile justice system and are being placed instead of being directed to supportive services to target a young person's challenges. Placements are overcrowded with little to no education and limited tools for a young person to thrive. There are more solutions than locking kids away. Lastly, HB 1381 decreases the use of solitary confinement. Young people are being exposed to solitary confinement at such a young age. No kid deserves to be treated this way. HB 1381 can limit these hardships for young people and ensure fewer young people are in placement in the juvenile justice system, which will be beneficial for everyone. We call on Harrisburg lawmakers and Governor Shapiro to act now and make this bill a law.
Thank you so much, Aqilah. And now also sharing her voice, Bree Hood, the Juvenile Law Center.
My name is Bree. My pronouns are they, them, she, her, and I'm with the Juvenile Law Center. House Bill 1381 is important because we took years to fight for this. It has been almost 3 years since the release of the Pennsylvania Juvenile Justice Task Force recommendations, and there has not been much progress. I want to highlight a few key provisions of House Bill 1381. Eliminating fines and fees would be a tremendous help because a lot of youth and families don't have the money or the financial stability to pay them off. These fines and fees sometimes follow youth into adulthood and can have very serious financial consequences. Also, raising the minimum age of juvenile court jurisdiction from 10 to 13 is important because very young children are often not able to understand the court process, and that's unfair for them. Picture your 10-year-old child being arrested and having to sit through court. The most common minimum age outside of the United States is 14, and we are still at 10. House Bill 1381 will also decrease the number of youth in detention, which is important because the detention center in Philadelphia has been extremely overcrowded. That resulted in fights, lack of education, lack of food, and inhumane sleeping conditions. That is why we need to use more diversion programs instead of locking youth up. The lack of care for youth has been an ongoing issue for years, and we need more support to correct it. So we hope that all you can fight alongside us by supporting and passing House Bill 1381. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bree. Next, sharing their voice, Jetson Cruz with the Youth Arts and Self-Empowerment Project.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jetson Cruz. I'm with an organization called Youth Art Self-Empowerment Project. And I'm the Youth Fellowship Coordinator, and I was impacted by direct file myself. And I am who I am today despite of that, not because of that. At 16 years old, I got charged as an adult and spent 7 years incarcerated in adult prison. When I went in, my son was 1 month old. When I came out, he was 7 years old. Direct file didn't just hurt me, it hurt my family too. And I know that it was my decision that got me incarcerated in the first place, but there's a reaction for every action. And getting charged as an adult made me stop caring. It made me lose hope for my future, lose interest in how life would look at the prison. And it made me forget who I am at times. For the people who don't know about direct file, or know about it but haven't experienced it, I want y'all to know and try to emphasize me when I say that it hurts. Being 16 or 14 or 15 or even younger than that, in the adult prison system, getting treated like an adult, makes you build this mindset that you is an adult. It makes you wish you was a kid again. Makes you want to give up, plays tricks on your mind that no teenager should have going on in their brain under any circumstances. No kid should be locked in a cell 23 hours of the day, listening to guards outside of the cell talking about what they doing after work, what they did over the weekend, what they looking like, and you 15 in a cell. While you look at walls that other people wrote on 5 to 10 years ago. Thinking and listening to crazy long numbers that you could be facing for over months or years at a time before you finally come to a time where you got to make a decision on what you're going to do for your future. I hope for the kids that I see incarcerated right now getting charged as adults that they get treated as any kid should. Fighting a criminal case should be in juvenile court right along with the rest of the juveniles. Getting 20, 30, 40 years as a 15-year-old is crazy. We basically stunting that child's growth when doing that. I am who I am today, not because of the system and its programs and none of that. Because I could think of a lot of people that was incarcerated as an adult while they was a juvenile that it did nothing for. I am who I am today because of my mindset, my motivation, and my strength. I was in an adult prison system when I was 17. My brother lost his life. That adult prison system ain't offered me no support when I was dealing with that. I would have took any program that it had to offer. There wasn't much to offer as far as program-wise in that adult system. We shouldn't want our teenage kids in that adult system, and that's the end of that.
Thank you, Judson. Next, we're going to hear from Sharif Ingram with the Youth Sentencing and Reentry Project.
Good evening. So my name is Sharif Ingram. I'm the Speakers Bureau Coordinator for Youth Sentencing Reentry Project in Philly. Before that, I was myself affected by direct file. I was charged with first-degree murder at age 15, sentenced to a mandatory life without parole sentence, and I served 23 years of that sentence before it was ruled unconstitutional by the U.S. Supreme Court. So there's a lot of good things in this bill, and I think Rep. Miller, he left for submitting this bill and having the courage to submit it and try to fight to get it passed at a time where we moving back to the days of being tough on crime and things of that nature. I remember in the 90s, there being a movement of tough on crime and the super predator movement and, labeling us as super predators and things of this nature. And I didn't understand at the time that they were speaking about me. And after being incarcerated all of those years and coming home and having the opportunity to give back to society, as many of us have, I look at countless former lifers that was labeled as incorrigible and monsters and predators, 15, 16 years old, being defined by the greatest mistake that they made in their life and being sentenced, to adult prisons, death sentences, life sentences, and now coming home contributing to society, helping to rebuild those same communities that we played a part in destroying at one point. And we don't see the same energy or the same conversations around youth now that we see those same people, despite the fact that we were placed in those facilities and they was designed in every way to destroy us. And we made it and survived it despite the system, not because of it. But what would the system look like, our societies look like, if we really focused on rehabilitating children, if we really focused on the root causes of why children like me end up in the system. And I'm from the city of Philadelphia, where the violence now is worse than when I left, you know, and the conversation is geared towards being tough on crime, and a concern with ending direct file is a concern that is not logical. Either way, whether children start off in the adult system or the juvenile system, it doesn't remove the possibility of children being charged as adults. What direct file would do is it would safeguard children from ending up in the adult system and not having the ability to the treatment in the juvenile facility. So every child would start off in the juvenile system being treated as a child, and in order to go to adult court, they would have to have a hearing before a juvenile court judge that's experienced with dealing with juvenile crime before they could be moved to adult court. So as a society, I don't think that we understand the many harms that not only it causes to the child, but society as a whole by placing children in adult prisons. You know, I was placed in a prison when I was 16 years old. I was sent to Greater Ford State Prison, you know, 16, 143 pounds, right? And I've seen some people that didn't survive this system, whether, you know, due to them being killed, killing themselves, just trying to escape, or people that do return back to society and reoffend, and society criticize them for not becoming better citizens, when the system did nothing to take that child to help them return to society to be a better citizen. Instead, it took that child and placed them in an environment that was designed in every way to destroy them. There's nothing in the adult system that's geared towards growth and development. And the majority of the children that's going through the adult systems are returning back to society. So if we send the children to prison and they coming home worse, in what way is this making society safer? So direct file not only will help protect the children, but it will also help society more safe, because we're addressing the issues that led to that child incarceration to begin with, and helping them return back to society with the skills and the things that he need, you know, to survive. I mean, to have a fruitful life. So, you know, I just ask that, you know, people really understand that there's a lot of important things in this bill, but there's nothing more important than direct file, in the sense of addressing the greatest harm in our system in the state of Pennsylvania when it comes to children is direct file. We live in a society that treats children like children, and we acknowledge that children are children in every aspect of our society except the criminal justice system. And when we look at the racial disparities, for anyone that denies that racism doesn't play a role, just look at the numbers.
Thank you so much, Sharif. Now we're going to hear from Hillary Transu.
Hello, I'm Hillary Transu. Sorry, my notes blew away. In April of 2007, I was sentenced to a youth forestry facility for mocking my vice principal online. I was sentenced by the now infamous former Judge Chivarella, who conspired to send children to the private detention center he owned in exchange for profit. Local officials and legislators swiftly condemned Chivarella's actions when exposed in the media under the sensational headline, "Kids for Cash." In 2009, an interbranch commission on juvenile justice was established to address conduct. My peers, particularly those who endured Chivarella's legacy, harbored hope for a fairer system. Unfortunately, 15 years later, that hope has largely faded. Pennsylvania's juvenile justice system remains inequitable, with reports of abuse in facilities such as Wordsworth, Glen Mills, Devereaux, Delaware County Juvenile Justice Center, Pennsylvania Juvenile Justice Services Center, among others. Despite the evidenced success of diversionary programs, out-of-home placements still take precedence, and children as young as 10 can become involved in the system. Juveniles face adult charges, and most importantly, youth of color bear a disproportionate burden. Supporting House Bill 1381 is crucial for Pennsylvania to demonstrate its commitment to its youth and set a national example of equitable practices. This bill can alleviate facility overcrowding, reduce crime with evidence-based approaches, reduce racial disparities in the system, and instill hope in our children and communities. Youth incarceration in Pennsylvania costs nearly $200,000 per youth annually, whereas intensive community-based interventions are 50 times less expensive. However, effective services like multi-systemic therapy are no longer contracted for in the state. Many offending youths lack strong community ties, making community-based diversionary programs crucial for establishing connections and support networks. These programs increase youth resilience by linking them to community resources. Diversion, proven more effective than formal court processing, boasts an 80% success rate. I was sentenced for a crime that should have been addressed by my school, a situation that House Bill 1381 aims to rectify by limiting school referrals to juvenile court. My offense was low level and non-violent, a common scenario in Pennsylvania where 3 out of 4 juveniles sentenced are in placement for first-time non-violent offenses. By reducing reliance on court discretion for youth sentencing, instances of juveniles being placed for extremely minor offenses can be decreased. Half of all youth in placement are incarcerated due to technical violations of probation, such as rule infractions. Even without committing new offenses, youth on probation are often removed from their communities, leading to overcrowding in detention centers like the Pennsylvania Juvenile Justice Services Center. This practice costs Pennsylvania over $140 million annually. At 14 years old, being sentenced left me horrified by my ostracization, traumatized by my separation from my family and community, and devastated by the label juvenile delinquent. It took over a decade to fully recover from being in placement, despite only being placed for 3 weeks. So expecting a 10-year-old to endure such an experience is unconscionable. At that age, many children are still immersed in imaginative play, making it horrifying to envision them navigating the system or grasping the gravity of their actions. Raising the minimum age of court jurisdiction to 13 is imperative to shield as many young children as possible from entering the system. Directly charging youth in adult court also deprives them of the chance to be treated as children, causing irreparable harm. In the court system, juveniles are often perceived as much older and criminally deviant like adults. Those prosecuted as adults are significantly more prone to rearrest compared to those handled within the juvenile system. And while black male youth constituted only 7% of Pennsylvania's youth population as of 2019, they represented 58% of youth prosecuted as adults. Eliminating direct file allows juveniles to be treated as children and addresses racial disparities in the system. We must eliminate fines and fees for youth in the juvenile justice system. Many entering cannot afford these charges and suffer further penalties as a result. While these might be trivial, seemingly, to those from more affluent backgrounds, these fees overwhelm impoverished families and communities. Considering the current age of juvenile court jurisdiction, expecting a 10-year-old to pay these fines is unrealistic. Unpaid costs prolong court supervision unnecessarily, hinder record expungement, and may even lead to incarceration. In 2019, black youth accounted for 31% of contempt cases for non-payment and 57% under court supervision until the age of 21. In Pennsylvania, black youth are 400% more likely to be incarcerated than white youth, highlighting a significant racial disparity that demands correction. It's crucial to address this inequity and allow youth of color to contribute their voices to this discussion. Those directly impacted by the system, particularly youth of color, can provide invaluable insights into the gravity of this situation. All youth voices deserve to be heard, but amplifying the voices of youth of color is especially vital as they represent a significant portion of those harmed by the system. Kids for Cash unfolded in Luzerne County 15 years ago. Today, I'm an educator, a writer, a mom. I'm no longer an authority on enduring the juvenile justice system in PA. I urge you to listen to those who are. Young people and families currently affected by the system possess voices and insights just as valuable, if not more so, than mine. We should extend our ears in compassion as we once did for the children affected by the Kids for Cash tragedy, to hear what this new generation has to say. Pennsylvania cannot afford to lag in adopting juvenile justice practices that prioritize children's well-being. We've already endured the disgrace of Kids for Cash. It's time to demonstrate our commitment to serving Pennsylvania's youth to the rest of the country. House Bill 1381 is a significant step in this direction.
Thank you, Hillary. Closing us out, Representative Melissa Shusterman, one of our legislative champions and co-chair of the Youth Safety Caucus.
As co-chair of the Bipartisan Youth Safety Caucus, I wanted to show my strong support for the efforts of so many of you here today as we work towards improving our Commonwealth's flawed juvenile justice system. I want to really acknowledge the incredible people who have just shared their stories. These are our children. These are members of our community. I'm blown away by all of your courage and determination and how you persevere through many obstacles put in your way within this broken system. And after going through all of that, what are you guys doing? You're advocating for others. It's absolutely incredible. Unfortunately, as we heard today, many children and young adults get stuck in this system. And it's an outcome that isn't good for the children and their families or our communities. Small infractions need to be addressed at the roots, not ballooned into a never-ending cycle in a broken system. I'm really looking forward to passing Rep. Miller's bill. I think this is the first step in pursuing justice for our youth, for today and our future generations. It's past time that we take the necessary steps to change and improve our juvenile justice system. You know what I really want to do? I want to throw away that word, juvenile justice system. It is time that we invest in our youth and our communities. Thank you very much for being here today. We appreciate this support.
Thank you to our speakers for sharing such powerful stories and for your commitment to improving things for those in the system now and in the future. This concludes our program. We have time to answer folks' questions if there are any. Thank you so much.